Bore da pawb. Good morning, everybody. It's another lovely morning in my wild Welsh garden. Absolutely still as still. Lovely buddleia, but sadly no butterflies on my butterfly bush. And underneath it there's this patch of wild marjoram, and then very long and lanky lavender. But this is a lovely bee border. I have wild marjoram popping up all over the place. Some on this side as well, all mixed up with a different sort of lavender, not so long and lanky. And then there's a nice patch there, all mixed up with, oh goodness, echinops and rose and geranium and oh yes, goodness knows what. I don't actually go in there to find out really. And I don't know if you people that have been watching me for a while remember, but in the winter I planted out 2 nettles. I was going to have an experiment, put 1 nettle in the ground and 1 nettle in a pot, and neither of them have done anything. Yes, they've both completely disappeared. So yes, there was I, worried about, nettles taking over the garden, and no, didn't get a look in. And I've been doing a little bit of garden maintenance. There's a trug there that's got various bits and pieces in. I've been pulling up the little willow herb that grows everywhere, and I also cut the dead heads off that little buddleia. But most of it is a perennial veg. I think it was a Turkish rocket that was down there and had lovely bright yellow flowers in the spring. But yeah, it had gone over and it was flopping over the path, so I've cut it down. I'm hoping it will grow up again. Should do. It's a perennial veg. You can see I've got some apples there on my little apple tree. But apart from that, everything's just been growing wild. And I did want to tell you about these lovely sort of statuesque umbellifers that are in several places in the garden, because I've been telling you that they were wild carrot. And there's one down here on the bed in front of the kitchen window which has flopped a little bit, because I bought some wild carrot plants and I sowed some wild carrot seeds. And there's another one here in front of the rowan tree. And so I assumed that these were wild carrots, but they're not. They're actually ordinary carrots. I remember now, I'd completely forgotten, but I grew some carrots last year, and they actually did very well in the polytunnel in a tub. But there were some small ones that I just couldn't be bothered to process really, because they were so small. So I planted them. I put them in the ground, and yeah, they've come up as these fabulous umbellifers. Well, this is my sole surviving wild carrot. It's in a little pot down there under the hydrangea, and I planted 3 in there, and the slugs ate 2 of them, and this is the only one that survived, and I must have planted, at least a couple of dozen. Yeah, so slugs have had a field day. So 1 wild carrot. So I did want to have wild carrot sort of self-seeding in my garden, but looks like that's not going to happen because I have too many slugs. This is a wildflower that's been a bit more of a success. It's a wild achillea. It's called sneezewort. And I put 5 little plug plants in the spring, and the slugs don't seem to like it, and it's grown, so maybe I shall have a lot of sneezewort in my garden instead of wild carrot. I thought you might be interested in seeing what's happening over the road. I've got my lovely nettle patch there that's all ready for the next generation of caterpillars. hopefully. And there's a lovely evening primrose and some knapweed, which is flopping, and some very, very tall teasels, and an enormous bramble patch, which actually isn't mine, it's on the land next door, but I do look after it, full of bindweed. So I'm going to have to get in there and cut things back a bit, because first of all, the brambles are growing out over the pavement, and people will complain if they get scratched. But also the bindweed was climbing up the trees. There's a wild cherry there. I think you can probably make out there's a couple of bindweed flowers there. Well, that's what's left that I couldn't pull off. I've broken the stems, so those are going to die. And then in there's a rowan, and the bindweed is almost pulling them over. So I've rescued those, but there's still a wild cherry in there that's covered in bindweed. So I should come out later and rescue that one. And there's a hawthorn there that's completely disappeared in bindweed, and a little oak tree that the bindweed's climbing up. And this bird cherry hasn't quite disappeared yet, but if it carries on, it will do. So yeah, so I'm going to come out here and try and remove some of the bindweed. It is a great plant for wildlife, but I think there's such thing as too much of a good thing, maybe. So yeah, I'm sadly missing a large herbivore or two to just come and wander around here and just chomp a few things and keep them in check. So that's going to have to be my job, which is quite difficult, because it's actually quite difficult for me to get in here. There's so many trip hazards. So most of it will have to be left until the winter. But I will come in and sort the bindweed. I feel a bit ashamed, really, showing you what's going on in the polytunnel. But as you can see, not a lot, really. Yes, the peas and the broad beans, I've eaten all those, and everything else has just gone over and is a horrible mess. But when you see something that needs doing and you think, oh yes, that needs doing, I'll do that tomorrow, and you never actually get round to it, and then you just kind of get used to it. I think that's what's happened here, really. But I'll just show you what I've seen. Caterpillars. They're on a broad bean leaf. And there. And there. Just munching the edge. And there's a couple there on what I think is some sort of mustard, part of one of those salad seed mixes that I sowed back in the spring. And there's one on a stem of last year's chard, and another, and another. I don't know what they are. They're some sort of moth. They're obviously a generalist feeder, because they feed on all sorts of different things. So yeah, pleased about that. So I've been feeling quite guilty about all this, really. So I came in here today and I was thinking, right, I'm going to clear all this. And then I saw all these caterpillars. So I'm quite pleased that I've left it, really. So I'm just going to leave them until they've finished eating and pupated, and then I'll clear it and hopefully make it a bit more productive for the winter. I've been sitting on the butterfly watching chair, and there's several white butterflies, 3 or 4, flying around the garden. And I know what they're going to do. They're going to mate and lay eggs on my brassicas. And I have such mixed feelings, because I'm so programmed against white butterflies, cabbage white butterflies. All my life I've tried to protect my brassicas from them. I mean, in the olden days, we used to spray them, didn't we, with insecticides, and then we used to just sort of watch the leaves and rub off the eggs and squish the caterpillars and net them, put nets over them. And I had nets over them last year. And this year I took them off. Yeah, so I know what's going to happen. And, you know, I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I'm going to let them eat my brassicas because, you know, even cabbage white butterflies are in decline. So I think it's more important that they eat my brassicas than I do. So, yes, I can't believe I've said that. How things have changed. Bewildering, really. There's a lovely comma butterfly on the buddleia. It's orange and has sort of serrated edges to the wings. And the larvae eat nettles. There we go. Oh, there he is. Yes, he's very shy, showing you what he looks like. Come on, open your wings. Let's have a look at you. There we go. Oh, and off he goes. Well, I brought you up here in the rain, so I had to bring you up on a clear day, really. That's looking down the Swansea Valley to the blurry sea in the distance. That's Cribbath, immediately in front of us. And there stretch the Brecon Beacons, Banau Brycheiniog to the west. And there's the sweeping slopes and majestic ridge of Van Brycheiniog. And then more Brecon Beacons going up behind me. And I'm up here counting butterflies, very unofficially and not very well, because as you know, I'm not very good at identifying things. There's nobody else to do it, so I come up about once a week and just see what I can see. But I come up here because it's quite warm down in the valley, but there's a nice breeze here, so I'm going to sit here and have my lunch. And then I noticed this incredible field of harebells, which was never here before, because this little area would have been completely munched and nibbled right down to the ground, to a sort of bowling green, with rocks, of course. But now there's flowers. Yes, there's harebells and lady's bedstraw and bird's foot trefoil and clover and hawkweeds or hawkbits, whatever they are. What else is there? There's tormentil and buttercup and more insects and more butterflies. So yeah, my heart is definitely happy today. And I've just realised that those of you who haven't watched my previous video when I came up here in the rain won't know what I'm talking about, but this is a nature reserve called Ogoffin and Thee, and it's been overgrazed by sheep for many, many years. But they went at the end of March, so since April it's been sheep free, and this is the result. So now the sheep have gone, the flowers can bloom, and because the flowers are blooming, of course, the insects are coming back. There's more bees, more hoverflies, and as I found today, more butterflies. And now I'm at the top of the reserve. That's looking down the Swansea Valley. That's the quarry that you could hardly see when I came up last time. I'm on the tram line here, and that's where the winching system was that pulled the trams up. And there's the gate through to the blasted heath where the sheep still graze, and Van Gehirich, the summit just peeping over the top. And you can just see there the dark line of some non-native conifer. It's a big plantation over there, which I don't think is good news for wildlife either. Might be good news for the Welsh economy.